All right, everybody, welcome to tonight's episode of the Washington Power Platform User Group. And tonight we're very excited to have Microsoft MVP Keith Whatling, who is one of my very beloved colleagues at Applied Information Sciences. And he's going to be talking about selling the Power Platform. Over to you, Keith.
Selling the Power Platform. Yeah, there you go. There's a tricky thing to do, isn't it? Like the seeded license, the death knell for getting any money out of Power Platform, right there. So I'm gonna share my screen because I've got some boring slides which you need to put on the screen every time you try and sell someone something. You have to kind of have some form of presentation because that's the law. So like selling Power Platform is quite a tricky prospect, right? Because there's money involved and no one wants to spend any. And they sure as hell don't want to spend any on a brand new technology that scares the living bejesus out of them, because it's a pretty terrifying value proposition for larger enterprise organizations and small and medium-sized businesses what the Power Platform can bring. Like what do you mean? It's like Excel. It's right, like the code's like Excel. Yeah. So is the problems the same? Okay, right. It's like Access. Okay, right. Are the problems the same? It's like SharePoint. Well, no, it's not like SharePoint because it's got a relational database behind it. But there's a lot of kind of consternation, and we really need to come to have a better understanding of what we're selling, how we're trying to sell it, what actually is the kind of the best methodology for doing sales. And I'm really interested in your kind of experiences of trying to sell it too, because that kind of let's make this an interactive a session so we can kind of, if you're saying something and I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, please do chip in and say, no, I've had success with that, and let us know how you had that success, because there is no kind of one size fits all to selling this thing. It's quite tricky, right? So the problem with the Power Platform, the first problem with selling a Power Platform is this problem, which is, let me get my mouse. It's who the heck are we selling this thing to, right? Now, if you buddy up with Microsoft to go on a sales rampage, and they fantastically good at helping you go on a sales rampage as a partner, or if you're internal in a business and you are the maker, and by business I mean any organization, that could be federal or government, whatever, you're trying to sell this platform, right? Now you've got two totally different avenues for selling this platform depending on where you sit, right? If you're with partner land trying to sell into a business, your primary people you're going to be talking to, if you're from the traditional M365 SharePoint Azure world, is going to be who? It's going to be IT, isn't it? Right? You're going to be selling to the technologists in a business. Okay. If you're a traditional business applications person, right, who's selling things like finance and operations and selling things like CRM, it's actually slightly different. Quite often you aren't selling to IT. Quite often you're selling to business. Interesting in that, because what's the difference between the two? I'll tell you in a minute, right? And then internally as well, who are you selling to? If you're the maker in any of these organizations that have seen huge amounts of success, what's the story that comes out? The story that comes out is this, that I went to my boss and we were super successful and we made this thing, and then IT came along and they were really upset, and like we had to work together and we did the center of excellence and blah, 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 blah. So what does that tell us? It tells us that if we want to sell Power Platform, don't sell it to IT, right? Don't sell it to IT. Selling it to IT is the worst. They're the worst people to sell it to, because a couple of reasons. First of all, the IT manager's sitting there all day long. Everyone's trying to sell to him. They got Oracle, SAP coming through the door every 5 minutes. So we want to change your ERP. We've got 1,001 different cloud solutions. We've got all these things falling apart. And the last thing they want to do, the very last thing the IT manager wants to do, is open the doors to a bunch of citizen developers to, I've heard it so many times, this seems like end user computing on steroids. And they're like, we need to lock this thing down. But the business, they're knocking down the door. They're going, yeah, let's do this. So let's sell to the business. There's two reasons for selling to the business. One, because they're soliciting developer. That's where they're selling it internally. And that's where those great customer success stories that we'll talk about in a bit come along from, right? Your Schlumbergers, your Arrivas, your Heathrows, they all come from the business selling to the business. Someone internally upselling a Microsoft product through their own business, right? Second of all, how much is IT used to paying for a Microsoft license? Okay, very important to think about that. How much is IT used to paying for a Microsoft license? Okay, Microsoft licenses don't cost a lot of money. Yeah, Azure, that's a different thing. You're paying for the service, you're paying for the runs, you're paying for the cycles and all the rest of it. Think about the psyche of the IT manager. Microsoft's products are normally fairly low cost per person, right, per user. So 20 quid, 30 quid, $30, $20 for an E3, an E1, an M365 license, all that kind of stuff. Oracle, SAP licenses, hundreds of dollars a month, right? And then we come along asking for another 30 for a Microsoft product that they've never heard of. That's selling to IT, okay? So we're selling to IT. Go back and sell to the business application specialists selling finance and operations and CRM and all that lot. They primarily sell to the business, and the licensing there is $120, $130, $90. Hang on a minute, that's what we wanted. We just want that kind of like someone to understand that Microsoft sells something else other than an E3, and I need X thousand of those just to keep the lights on, and something else for my ERP and something else and something else. So I think fundamentally who we are selling to is one of the things that trips us up, right? And I think we need to start selling not to IT, but start engaging with conversations around other people in the business. And I think it's very important to engage with people who's benefit. Well, yeah, that's what I said about it. And I think it's very important to engage with people who are going to benefit from the platform, right? So like if you're going to a business and you're going to sell and you're going to sell to people with a huge amount of clout, sell to people who are going to benefit the most from the platform, right? So let's have a think about who's going to benefit the most from the platform, right? Which type of business leader generally tends to have a huge amount of analytics that needs doing? The finance director, they're the ones who hold the purse strings. What are they bought? Power BI, got loads of licenses. All the businesses have got Power BI, right? So then you have a look at the HR department, who typically manage to push through some of the worst technology you've ever seen, right? Workday, for example, and a few of the others that you're kind of languishing out there. And every time you see one of these HR systems in a business, you just think to yourself, oh, God, it's so sorry for the people who had to put that thing in. So my point is this: HR people generally tend to have a lot of apps, and they have a lot of gaps in their technology stack. They also their staff have to do a huge variety of work and a huge variety of different workloads and work types with lots and lots of different data types. So, for example, when I was on working in public transport, HR would be looking after not just the normal HR bits that a business does, but they've got this benefits thing that sits on the side of it. And the benefits, like HR managing benefits, is just absolutely huge. And the benefits list goes on and on and on and on for every grade. And if you've got companies merging and all that kind of stuff, interacting, keeping track of the benefits is just absolutely bonkers. And then you've got kind of the cultural things they do and this, that, and that. So HR, massive. Manufacturing in a business, massive. Operations, massive. If you look at SNCF, right? Have a look at the SNCF user story. SNCF, massive in Power Platform, absolutely huge. Who put SNCF together? The performance director, not the IT guy, the performance director, the chief officer in charge of performance, he's the one who drove Power Platform through their business. And note that I said platform, not apps. So very, very important that we understand who we are selling to and who it may be better to kind of go and explain it to and engage with and cold call rather than the traditional IT route. Because at the end of the day, we're going to cause a problem in Power Platform unless we go and successfully sell some governance. The governance conversation is what we have with IT. The business transformation bit is what we should be having with the leaders and any internal development teams that a large enterprise organizations got. So what am I selling, right? Now this is like I could run you through this script 150 million times because that's how many times I've come across it, right? And this is what happens the very first time you go in and you demo the Power Platform, right? And depending on what you're demoing, and I'm a Power Apps guy, I love Canvas apps, so I'm going to talk about Canvas apps, right? This is the first thing they do, okay? First thing they do. You go in and you say, does this app thing, it's amazing, makes apps in 5 minutes, brilliant, unbelievable, do whatever you like with it. They say, and how much is that going to cost? And you say, well, there's this per app plan and there's this per user plan, and well, what's the cheaper one? Well, it's the per app plan. It gives you 2 apps and blah blah blah, and you have a conversation that doesn't make sense to anybody, and you talk about all sorts of licensing, and it still doesn't make sense. But this is what happens: they sit down and they say, all right, I've got 40 people in my business. That's £400 a month, $4,080 a year. Does that sound reasonable? For that size company, yeah, actually, it doesn't sound too far off, right? That doesn't sound too far off, right? Okay, all right, I'll take that. But then you go up a step, and it starts getting bigger, and it starts getting bigger, and you kind of start getting towards this problem where the bigger the organization you sell to that's got the money to buy a Power App off of you rather than make it themselves, right, starts to become prohibitively expensive to start selling the per app plan. And it's not prohibitively expensive when, Microsoft will swing in there and do a discount when it gets over this and do that and a competitive price and all that stuff. It's the very first bit out the gate when that manager sits there, pulls out their calculator and says, right, this many people times this many licenses times 12. And they hit the button and they go, no. That's exactly what they do. I've seen it almost every single time I've gone to sell the Power Platform, unless they've done their research and they're into this kind of new compute model, right? If they are very much old school and they've never heard of it, they don't understand about kind of low code, no code development, that is what they're going to do, because that's what they're used to doing with Oracle. It's what they're used to doing with SAP. It's what they're used to doing with traditional Microsoft licensing. And the issue is when it gets really big, you kind of lost them, right? When you get into enterprise and you start talking about thousands of users, even with the licensing coming down to the COVID level that it was when it was sort of $2 or $3 a license, it's still too much money for them. Because right, what else can they get for their money? Yeah, and that's what they've got, that's what they're looking at. So they're saying, right, so if I'm paying you, let's take the middle one there, let's take the $76,000, right? For $76,000, can I buy an app? Can I buy one app that's traditionally coded in C#, Python, Django, whatever, that's got a website, that's all kind of traditional, that I can, put my money on and say, that's an app, I know what it is, I know I can touch it, it doesn't scare me, it's traditional, and I can just pay that money. And for 75 grand, I don't have to come back the next year and pay it. I might pay a maintenance fee, but it won't be anywhere near as much as that. I can buy that one solution and I can walk away. Now, one of the things that has been a real kind of success is COVID, right? Selling COVID stuff. So like return to work and all that kind of stuff. So if you're going off to sell return to work, for example, you face this problem that you have this one app that you're trying to compete, sorry, with a point solution, and competing with those point solutions is very, very tough. And you've got to change your standpoint. You've got to change your angle of approach, because you cannot compete with point solutions that have beautiful interactive maps, that have functionality that Power Apps cannot replicate, unless you're going off down a PCF kind of pseudo development route, and it's kind of, you're now kind of costing yourself more money than you were going to make out the project in the first place. So there's a whole kind of gamut of should I, shouldn't I, with buying Power Platform. And I've got to say, would I buy it if I, and you know, you'll see this yourselves, like you'll go in and you'll compete against the point solution, and everyone gets really excited about Power Platform coming to a business for this one thing. And what you might get lucky is you might turn around and say, look, that's lit the fire on the company, but they'll never buy that point solution for return to work. But they'll definitely go off and start thinking about Power Platform in the business. So it's still worthwhile doing it, right? But it's still very, very, very dangerous to go in and kind of like compete against the point solution like that. You have to talk about the platform approach. You have to talk about the platform, the platform, the platform. You cannot compete against a point solution selling an app unless that app is the gold-plated man with the golden gun dipped in gold and diamonds and thrown into the outer space. You are never going to compete with the pricing of a point solution, right? It just, for an enterprise, for a larger enterprise organization, you're going to be right up against it, right? So now, instead of looking at selling them the per app plan, trying to be cheap, trying to be their friend, trying to keep their costs down, right? Let's just stop doing that, because what are we selling? Again, what are we selling? We are selling a platform. Let's stop selling apps and workflows and selling power bots and virtual dashboards and God knows what else, right? Let's start selling a platform. Let's start going in and saying this thing is worth every single penny of the $40 per user license and more. Let's stop sitting there in a sales meeting and going, well, I don't really want to build it on SharePoint, but I will because it'll be cheaper, and I don't think you're going to pay for it otherwise, because you know the per app plan's not really going to make much sense to you. So do you know what? I'm going to sell it to you for SharePoint. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's go right in there, bold as brass, and let's sell them the per user plan, right? Let's sell them the unlimited, super big, do all you like plan, because this is the change that you see, right? This is what happens to your value proposition when you're going and you're selling. And this is the fundamental difference in selling the platform, right? Oh, I can have as many workloads as I want for that price there, right? And you know what? That's not far off of what you would be paying. And I know this because I live with a small business owner. When you've got like a couple of stores, you've got Shopify, you've got this, you've got that, you've got the other. It's about £1,200 a month that you're paying for your for your solution. So it's even kind of makes sense to the small business owner, right? Let's go up a scale. Let's look at digital transformation for a 160 plus organization. That's a good price. That's a good price. 160 people, 75k a year, right? And you're going to get so much benefit back out of that. You could probably save a couple of jobs. That's probably what someone's salary just about. And you're going to be saving a huge amount of cost. Let's go up again. This is where it gets really exciting, right? Start looking at the numbers and start thinking about what that means to that business and how many heads you're saving and what the cost is of those other point solutions. Let's say now suddenly you got your 640 person company and they were going off and they had their SAP, they had their Oracle, they had this, that, and the other. And now they've got a solution that can turn on its head because we've sold them the platform. We've come in and done it the big way. So now instead of selling them an app, we're selling them digital transformation. We're selling them app modernization. We're selling them award-winning enterprise because of Power Platform, right? And if you don't think we're selling award-winning enterprise for Power Platform, go and hit up a guy in the UK called Simon Owen, right? Did this at GlaxoSmithKline, big pharmaceutical company in the UK. Their Ware site, where he works, in Ware, W-A-R-E, they were nominated for a top 40 industrial sites in the world by the World Economic Forum for the most technologically advanced sites. And part of the reason that they were nominated for that was because of the use globally inside that factory of Power Platform. Everyone had it, no paper. Every single process had data, all speaking back to a data source. Absolutely revolutionary, award-winning enterprise, right? And the funny thing is about these businesses, and you'll see, Schlumberger, you'll see Glaxo and all the rest of them. One thing that they all suffer from is they're all looking back and they can't see that they're in the lead. Everyone else is kind of looking at them to catch up, but they can't see anyone in front of them. So they're never confident enough to know that they're in the lead because everyone's behind them because they can't see anyone in front of them. So there's a really interesting problem that they have. One of the best places you can go, and I say this because I know the guy, and Andrew speaks better about this than any human I have come across on the face of the earth, right? And that is the Power Platform adoption framework, right? Read about it as a platform. Stop thinking about it in terms of apps and flows and dashboards and virtual agents, right? Start talking about workloads, right? Coming to the platform. Start talking about app modernization. Start pulling out the vocabulary that Andrew's used in this fantastic piece of work. I mean, but there's other contributors as well. But Andrew has a way of shaping the ideas of others into very, very, very digestible words for enterprise and business customers. So wholeheartedly recommend that you kind of really digest what it says. And it will seem so basic to you when you read it. When I first read it, I was like, yeah, well, that's really obvious. But then if you read deeper, you see how it's written and who it's positioned to. And you can almost quote chapter and verse out of it sometimes when you're in a sales meeting and say, these are the things that you can hit up to kind of loosen the shackles, as it were, on the purse strings of the people who are buying. However, I will tell you this: in my sort of circa 2 or 3 years of selling this platform internally to an enterprise organization and working in a couple of partners and being very heavily involved in the sales process, I will tell you this: there is nothing more powerful than selling the Power Platform than user stories, right? Than Microsoft customer success stories. There is nothing more powerful than those, right? I've got a bunch of them that I can share with you, and I'm going to share some of them with you because they are, without a doubt, the single biggest bulldozer that you can bring to a meeting with an unsure customer or a customer who doesn't know, right? So the customer who doesn't know, there is almost a user story that you can find to fit anybody, right? A user story that you can find to fit anybody on a Power Platform, be it apps. So getting there with robotic process automation, but certainly with apps, flows, Power BI, and to some extent Power Virtual Agents, right? So I find that these are super powerful, and I'm gonna go with Vanessa first because she was one who coined some phrases and kind of opened my eyes to what was possible. Vanessa is she heads up a Power Platform Center of Excellence at Standard Bank in South Africa, right? They're Africa's biggest bank. They have offline apps that service cash machines, right? Because Africa's a big country and mobile reception's patchy, and they service their cash machines offline with Canvas apps. Do you want to know the really crazy thing about that? They were doing that in 2017, right? They were doing that 3 years ago with the platform. 3 years ago with the platform, they had 22 or 23 Power Platform developers in a center of excellence. They were one of the first centers of excellence anywhere in the world. So you can go and look at them as a mature model, as one of the mature models for Power Platform, and learn their stories. Now, the great thing is Vanessa's been to MBAS and she's done a couple of speeches, and I would wholeheartedly go and recommend you listen to them. Her boss also did a bunch of speeches at MBAS 2018, so I would wholeheartedly recommend that you go and listen to him, and find their stories and understand what they used to do it. Do you have any idea how powerful it is when someone says to me this? Oh, but I don't like the security of this platform. Like, I don't think it's ready for workloads like, financials. And I say, well, Standard Bank in South Africa is servicing their cash machines remotely in an offline app that was made by a couple of citizen developers. Mic drop. See you later. Walk out the door. Right? It just completely bulldozed that argument. That one phrase. Vanessa also coined digital guardrails and data stewards, two phrases that have become kind of very well known in the Power Platform, creating great data stewards. So go and listen to Vanessa. She will see you right. Then my good buddy and fellow colleague at AIS, Nick Gill. And it's not actually Nick's story here that really kind of loosens the purse strings with the customers, right? I mean, yeah, it does, because it's his gateway to learning and all the great stuff, and how he talks about it. It's awesome. But actually, it's one of the Red Cross apps that was built. Okay, so we're talking about rapid application development. We're talking about quality. We're talking about how it can help the business and all that kind of stuff, right? So I can't remember the situation with the manager, but I've used this story so many times just as a kind of a, this thing's quick and can turn on a dime. So in the UK we say turn on a sixpence, but I've been working for an American company, so I say turn on a dime now. So basically, like, there's a lady there, Kathy Jacqueline. I met her. She's awesome. She's retired. She used to work for Cisco. She's not technical, but she used to work for Cisco, so she's not scared of technology, right? So as one of the big hurricanes coming, I can't remember what it was, a really nasty hurricane coming to the US, like it was the second biggest one on record or something like that. And they built an app whilst the hurricane was coming, right? So the hurricane's out at sea and it's coming, they know it's coming, and they take like, what, a day to come on shore? Like, about it, and you kind of, everyone's running around with the shutters, and everyone in the UK is watching them going, God, glad we don't live there. We weren't on the Mayflower, probably for a good reason. Everyone's bashing it. And Kathy, she's sitting there, she's making her app. She sends it out, finds out where the people are, finds out how they are, finds out who they are, finds out if they're okay, do they need help, all that kind of stuff, right? How powerful is that when you walk into a business? Oh, hang on, we've got a business problem today and we need to capture some information on it. Bang, an app, off you go. Like, there's a sales point right there. And if it wasn't for sitting down, listening to Nick's story, and really getting into the weeds with Nick, like one-to-one, like, and understanding how amazing that story was, and surfacing that story within the Power Platform, within the customer success team at Microsoft. Next year at MBAS, Kathy's there doing her speech. She's there telling everybody about the app she built. But Nick didn't think it was that big of a deal when we first kind of talked about it. That app has sold, that concept and that app has sold so many Power Apps. It's opened so many eyes. You see customers going, oh goodness me, what it can do. That's just completely bonkers, right? And you talk about complete digital transformation, right? So let's talk about Eric McKinney. And Eric is loud and he's bonkers, but he is the IT manager, right? Small, medium-sized business, G&J Pepsi Cola bottlers. They're about 400 strong, right? And Eric says to me this. He said, like Keith, he said, we should not have this technology. It does not belong to us. This is the technology that an enterprise has. We shouldn't be allowed to play with this stuff, right? We shouldn't, and if you know Eric, you'll know that he was at not Build, what's the other one? The big one for the Inspire, that's it. He's at Inspire, right? And he's on stage with Satya Nadella and Ryan Cunningham, And they're showing the AI builder. They're showing AI builder scanning the Pepsi bottles on the shelves of his customers, right? Because we shouldn't have that technology. But Eric believed in it, right? And Eric's story of like being this small, medium-sized business and how they managed to transform themselves is what a lot of businesses need, because inside of every business, there's many other businesses, there's many other silos. And if you're selling to the business, guess what? Here's a great story. Oh, how many people are in your department? When you talk to an enterprise leader and they're buying the platform, it's many, many thousands. You're talking about the corporate level. But when you get down into the business units, it's several hundred people. Just so happens that that's Eric's size. A lot of the time, they're looking for some autonomy in their platform. So Eric's story is a great catalyst for the business unit level leaders, getting them on board and getting them excited about the platform. And this is the real trick to selling it. It's a single kind of wave of excitement through an organization. And it's you cannot just stop with one bit of the organization. The issue is always going to be breaking out of IT. Breaking out of IT, if you're a traditional seller selling SharePoint, selling Office 365, selling Azure, and breaking into the business application space where you're traditionally going to be selling to business leaders, right? But Eric McKinney, fantastic person to go and kind of pick that up from. Alan Chai as well. There is not a sales call I think I've done where I have not mentioned Schlumberger. In fact, I think I probably talk to customers about Schlumberger at least 3 or 4 times a week, almost on a daily basis, of this is what Schlumberger are doing as best in class. 1,500 hackers. Well, what does that mean? 1,500 hackers at their last hackathon. There's 100,000 people in that company, right? And 1,500 hackers turned up. And you think to yourself, good grief, that's a lot of people building apps. They got 15,000 odd apps and like 20,000 flows or something at last count. Their crisis communicator app that Microsoft put out there for COVID, Georgia, one of the girls that comes to the London user group, she built that for Schlumberger. Schlumberger shared it. They pushed it out into the world to do some good, to get some social interaction. Alan's first app was an app he built for his mate who'd passed away through, he had a health complaint. And Alan was like, if we could just be more healthy, if we could just be more active. So he built an app to kind of encourage everybody to get up off their backsides and go and be active, right? Alan did that. Yeah. And the next thing you know, the IT department are getting calls about this app because there's 20,000 people using it across the organization. It went, and you can't buy adoption like that. When you see what Alan then goes on to do and how he transforms a business and how he talks about it, read his story, get involved, talk to the guy on Twitter, talk to him on LinkedIn. He's a lovely chap. The people at Schlumberger love sharing their story. So reach out to them and chat to them, understand their user stories, and they will definitely knock your barriers down for you inside of businesses. Now, you don't just have to go to the Microsoft customer success stories to find out about great apps and great workflows and all the rest of it. They are sitting right under your very nose. Okay, so the one was right under my very nose. Peter Bryant, right? He's a guy at London user group, and he walks in, and I was like, I couldn't believe what he did. Right? Everyone's sitting there going like, oh, what did he do? Like, he did this amazing thing with Power Platform. And it was something that like everybody in the Dataverse side of the camp was just like, oh, he didn't do that, did he? Did he really do that? And what he did was he had a small customer, right? Then we talk about that real micro customer, right? He's got a business that has got 10 employees and they install aerials. I don't know if you call them aerials in America, but like the antenna on your house for picking up your TV signal, right? And that's all they do. Very low cost. They've got next to no technology. They've got an access database running everything, but they really want, and their blokes are out every day. They're writing, they're up the ladder and they're fitting the aerial and they come back down. They write on a sheet of paper, throw it in the van and drive off. But they've got inventory from really big businesses, right? So they've got inventory from Sky, from our from the UK satellite organized companies and that kind of stuff that they got to keep track of. And it's not working very well, right? So they bring Peter in. He goes and connects that access database, right, because they didn't want to pay for licensing. And this is a bad example of not paying for licenses, but this is certainly like a no reason to say no, and a great user case. When someone asked me, can you connect Power Platform to Access? He pumped Access through SharePoint and had SharePoint as the middleware to talk to Power Platform and back to Access again, right? And he did that, and it worked, and it's continued to work, and it's been up and running for over a year, and he hasn't had any problems with it, or so he tells me. So there are completely bonkers and ludicrous use cases right here on all of you've all got use cases. You've all been successful with Power Platform. I suggest you massively share your success stories with one another, and you say, oh, you look, come to the user group. Say to your customer, come to the user group, come to the user group, meet these people. They'll tell you all about it. They'll talk to you, wax lyrical to you about it all day long. They want to share. They want to share. The second kind of biggest thing I think that really sells a platform for me, though, is the human angle, right? It's that human angle, and it's this idea of digital inclusion, right? And it's about the many apps, and yes, you have to have the platform approach for this to happen. And digital inclusion is this concept that I, as an app maker, right? I'm center of excellence. Yeah, I've got a template. Yeah, kind of all that kind of stuff. So I can make an app for the CEO, but at the same time, I can make an app for the cleaner, right? And this guy in the picture here, genuine chat, Terry, he hoses the bus underneath, washes the detritus of the world off the bus. In London, there's God knows what falling on his head, fingers and bits of bird and burgers and chips and everything, and dirt and awful. Who wants to do his job? No one wants to do that man's job. Like, why would anybody be queuing up to do that job? Awful job. So he doesn't think that technology is going to come to him in this part of the business anytime soon, right? Got a pen and a clipboard and writes his work down and puts it on a tray, and someone puts it in a folder, and there it goes to die. But he's underneath that bus, and he's cleaning it, and he's inspecting it, and he's the only person who sees that bus dirty. Everyone else, when they come to work on the bus, they see it clean. He's the only one who sees it dirty. He's got a unique view on the world. So what happens? A clerk, right? The guy who he hands the piece of paper to, a guy called Piotr, he puts an app together, starts building an app, and he builds one person an app. He builds an app for one human being, right? And that is the fundamental difference when you go down the per user plan, is that you can have an app for one person in the business. It doesn't have to be a complicated app. It can just be a simple app. But the fact of the matter is, at no point in history has anybody gone and made an app for one human being. Well, unless you're Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or someone like that. But like, can you imagine walking into that same finance director's office, right? Standing in front of them and saying, I want $40 a month for a per user plan to completely digitally transform the business. It will be incredible. And now and they might sign off on it, right? Because they feel like you're talking sense. Now let's flip that around the other way and say this. I'm coming into your finance director's office, and I'm going to say, right, I need an app for building one person, and it's going to be a traditional development app. Let's say it's going to be 40 grand for an app, and they're just going to look at you and laugh. They're looking at you and laugh and say, see you later, ta-ra, don't pass go, you're not good, right? This platform allows you to build an app for one person. Now, when you go down that platform approach, it's connected to can be connected to a single centralized source of the truth, like Dataverse or one of the other large kind of database technologies, not SharePoint, and it will do incredible things for you. But the most incredible thing it does is that man, Terry, gets his phone out, and his expectation of what the company is delivering to him as an employee has fundamentally changed, right? It's fundamentally changed. He now feels that the business values him, that it values his work, because all of a sudden he is part of the technological revolution that he was never part of before. And at home, he's got Alexa, he's got Amazon, he's got Google, he's got all these things that do all these amazing things. He's got a phone in his pocket that sent, more powerful than sent man to the moon and all that kind of shenanigans, all those wonderful tropes. But when he turns up for work, he's got a pen and a bit of paper. And that doesn't make sense. Like we've got, we've gone way awry. So all of a sudden he's got his app and he's happy. And that works. There's also a number of other things you can sell once you've kind of broken through the Power Platform. And I'm going to cover this off and then finish up with some questions. And there's training and development. There's high superclass apps. There's a curation of works where you're going in and maintaining and fixing other people's apps. There's adoption and governance and selling center of excellence and the creation of center of excellence, extension of it. There's the info path transfers. There's more app modernization, and there's so many more. There's the amount of interest in Power Virtual Agents and robotic process automation has just grown exponentially. And I'm sure next year all we'll be talking about is RPA and chatbots, and Power Apps will be a vaguely distant memory, but we'll also be excited about it because that's what we do. And other than that, do you disagree with me? Do you think there's anything I've missed? Would you sell it a different way? Would you go in with a different approach? What would you do?
So you said one thing that completely made me think about this in a whole different light, right? You said you sell governance to IT, but you sell the platform to the community or to the users or to the people who who are building or in the trenches day to day. And so it's kind of funny because the first thing we think about is the purse string, and we say IT is the purse string. But the one thing that I think we all experienced was the fact of, and I think I think you did say this as well, is the fact of when IT see anything new, any Power Apps, anything, any Teams, anything else, the first thing they say is no, because they don't know how to control it.
Yeah, we don't have budget, we don't have resource, we don't have anything, and you'll know. I mean, I'll tell you now, the most difficult bit of setting up any center of excellence. And if you watched the Power Platform Happy Hour for last week, Andrew and I we did a session on setting up on COE and governance, a roundtable, and the thing that came out as the most difficult bit of setting up governance in any organisation is the roles and responsibilities agreements around who does what in an organization, because no one's got any time, no one's got any money, no one's got any resource. No one has go and buy a low code, no code platform in their in their kind of year to, like, this year we will go and buy a low code, no code platform. That's coming. That's definitely coming. We're starting to see the green shoots of organizations going out and doing that and seeing it and saying, right, we need to factor this in. But we're still very early on in the adoption curve. We're still talking to organizations who have heard about it, seen it on TV, did a Microsoft Day, but weren't really paying attention, and because their kid was ill, or they had some outage or whatever it was, and they just didn't know about it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Anton, definitely selling to IT people, not great. Like, if the people who are most frustrated with technology in the business aren't IT, it's the business users. Michael, you got your hand up.
Yeah. So the only part that I like, when you were talking about per app versus per user, and the scenario that you were talking about seemed like a more per app scenario. Like, it's one person using an app within an organization. So I guess I didn't really get why you would want a per user license in that scenario, except maybe it's using custom connectors or something like that. So I guess that was the one thing you kind of.
No, I mean, more of the kind of all right. So there are certain bits of an organization where if you go in and say, so if you do it this way, right? If you come in and say, look, we'll go per app plan first, and then we deal with the 80-20 approach, right? So it's more going to be 80% of the people will need the per user plan eventually. Like they're going to need between 6 and 8 enterprise apps or 20 enterprise apps for doing 20 different things. And there'll be a bunch of frontline workers who are really on the periphery who may need 1 or 2 apps. And you can kind of take that and slice that up. So instead of doing it the way that I did it for years like this, Michael, I used to go in and say, the per app plan starts at 2 apps, and then you can stack that to 4 to 6 to 8 until you get to this big one up here. I don't do that anymore. I go in and say the per user plan is $40 a month, right? And that enables you to build as many apps as you like. It's all you can eat. And for people who don't need all of those apps, for the few who won't need them all, there's these lower SKUs down here. It used to be I was so scared of saying to them it costs money because of the seeded thing, and we were kind of like, we could do this on SharePoint for nothing, that thing. Like we've conned ourselves into thinking that this thing isn't as valuable as it really is. Like, and it's ridiculously valuable,
No, it's great. I honestly, I agree with you. I was just wondering I agree that the per user, like you can sell the per app easily because it's so cheap, but again, like eventually they're going to need the per user seat. So yeah, okay,
just
cool.
Just go in, sell them per user first, tell them about it, like get them excited about it, like, and people, do you know what my boss said, one of my bosses told me one day, he said that no one's going to buy that, not Power Platform, it's something else. He said no one's going to buy that because it's too cheap. He said, and they won't think it's good quality. End of story. Doesn't seem like it costs enough money. You're telling me it does all this incredible stuff for $10 a user? Nah, I can't do.
Cool. Great job, Keith.
So Aiden couldn't come off mute. His comment was, we don't want the issues he's heard from IT are we don't want people to build things and have problems because they want us to fix them.
Yep. All day long. I'd say the easiest way around that is when you look at very successful organizations like Schlumberger, and again, it's go to the user stories. Like you'll see what they're doing. The communities, look, Schlumberger, but SNCF, okay, right? SNCF is a great example. So SNCF, transport company, everyone who works at transport for like 40 years. Everyone there has been there for forever and they never leave. So they've got really talented people when it comes to doing transport that have got absolutely no IT skills whatsoever, right? So one of the apps that they built was an app to train people how to use technology. They built their training, learning, and development suite in Power Platform, right? So it's like, and then you've got Schlumberger who've got this ridiculous community inside their organization, and we're finding these communities more and more now as like when you're going in and you're doing your 365 adoption, you've got the SharePoint community, you've got the M365 community, you've got your Power BI community. Like they're quite often already there in the business. And all they need is like, and with Power Platform and the Center of Excellence, creating and maintaining and curating those communities is even easier. So I'd say, again, look at the user stories, because the user stories and all of their kind of glitz and glamour that they've got with them will really help you knock those barriers down. You'll see that, within the Center of Excellence, it helps you build that community. Like you can't leave it alone. You can't just install it and walk away, but like you've got the tooling there to help you do it. So yeah, for sure. That answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see here. Solar wrote a comment. In reality, we do not like to wait IT to solve the issues. We want to get it done ASAP.
Yeah.
So thank you,
that's
Solar.
into the business all day long. And look, business applications, in the UK, finance and operations or FNSCM, finance and supply chain management from the Dynamics stack, very, very popular. I know in the States you've got a lot of GP. There's a huge Salesforce presence in the States as well. Those systems cost a lot of money. And if you think that the first party applications these days are just big power apps, and you can get that for half the price. But you've got to build some of it yourself. You know, I remember one of my very good friends, Jason Almeida, said to me, I said, how does it work? When I was first getting into this, I said, how do these first party applications work? And he said, well, we install them and then we customize about 70% of them. And I said, hang on a minute. So you go and put in CRM and you get 30% of the platform, and then you have to customize the other 70%. What's the point in buying it in the first place? Why don't you just make it from scratch for 100%?
Yeah, that is that definitely that resonates with me. I've noticed that as well.
One question from earlier that might be good to touch on was around negotiation. So we have our set kind of prices for the different licenses, but is there the ability for organizations to negotiate with Microsoft, and like, what are your recommendations for that?
There is. I mean, I don't want to kind of like take words out of Microsoft's mouth and start promising discounts and all that kind of stuff. Microsoft have always been a company that offers competitive licensing. They want to make a sale. And Ryan Cunningham and Charles Lamanna says licensing shouldn't get in the way of a good app, right? But obviously they're not going to give it away for free, but licensing shouldn't get in the way. So I was saying, look, if it's a real sticking point, offer your soul to Microsoft, right? To see if they will give you a little bit of a sprinkler. Yeah. Discount code Keith Whatling, that's the one. So and by that I mean, like, be favorable to them. I mean, do you think that they, if you're kind of, how can you maximize your return on investment? Well, it's offer the user story, right? It's have enough gumption in your business to kind of share externally, do what Schlumberger are doing, right? Have that kind of narrative with Microsoft where you're showing them and you're sharing your success, you're sharing your stories, all that kind of stuff. It will get you somewhere for sure. I don't know whether it gets you a bigger discount, but I genuinely think that if people aren't ready to buy, then leave it, let them macerate, and they will come back. We see it all the time. Like they walk away from one solution that's competing with a point solution, like something with return to work. Yet they come back to you and say, well, actually, we've got all these other apps on our backlog. And it's when you start talking about like migrating that app backlog and reducing that backlog with Power Platform, that they kind of come back into the room and they start talking about all these other things over here. And then the negotiation for the price kind of diminishes ever so slightly. But just have a grown-up conversation with Microsoft. They're normally pretty good when it comes to having a sticking point and understanding where you're coming from and why you're trying to do it and what your glide path is. And you've got some really good people in the DC area. I know that for nothing. They're particularly good bunch of account execs at Microsoft that actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I think Keith, with that sentiment, I think that's across the board as well. I mean, just from community as a whole, is to be able to share your experiences with Microsoft, good, bad, or indifferent. I think the one thing that we forget while we're just working, like we all get a little pissed, or we all get happy about when things work and when things don't work, but no one, we kind of keep it to ourselves, opposed to kind of going back to some people that we know that work for, or in the community, or Twitter or something else, to say, hey, this is not working, and let them know. I mean, they're a company. I think they build everything for us that we touch. It's their alpha. We think is go live and is GA, but there's some other bugs that we find, but people have to let them know that is good or is bad. So I think not just from the standpoint of selling or buying as a company, but as community members, we should do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think, and Microsoft listens to feedback from the community, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool community that we have here. And honestly, Keith, that was a really good presentation. So thanks for that.
I tell you one thing I say, I my my CIO when I was in transport, she said to me, can I speak to another CIO who's done this? I'd love to speak to another CIO and sort of like get their perspective on it, what are the pitfalls and all that kind of stuff. That's really that's really difficult to get that to happen. But in terms of like your kind of user group, if you can kind of facilitate those conversations and maybe, or look, I've got this guy you can speak to. And it was, Samit Saini and I went to Autoglass with Martin Lee, and we ran up in a day for him, and he came to us and ran up in a day with us. And we all sort of like, and our companies were like, yeah, it's fine. Just go and, just share. And like, we're not just giving away the family silverware, but we're letting you have a little look, but we're not going to kind of give it to you. It does help kind of grease the wheels a little bit of businesses sharing. And as long as there's no competitive kind of restrictions or legal reasons why you shouldn't be doing that, there's no reason not to talk.